Welcome to the program. I'm Min Sun-hee with our group of foreign correspondents. It's good to see you all again.
Nice to be back. Thanks.
Right, it's been a year since Seoul suspended operations at the Kaesong Industrial Complex in North Korea in response to Pyongyang's continued provocations. In this edition of Foreign Correspondents, we discuss what lies ahead for this joint industrial park that has witnessed its fair share of ups and downs. Only 60 or so kilometers away from Seoul lies Kaesong City in Hwanghae-pukto Province. Situated here is Kaesong Industrial Complex, once a symbol of peace and economic cooperation between South and North Korea. The history of the complex dates back to October 1998, when Chung Ju-young, the founder of the Hyundai conglomerate, crossed the south-north border with a herd of cattle. In August 2000, Hyundai Asan and North Korea adopted an agreement to develop the industrial complex. In June 2003, using the South's technology and capital and the North's manpower, construction began. And over a year later, in December 2004, the first products from the Kaesong complex rolled out of factories. The industrial park has faced numerous difficulties over the years. In 2009, roads to the complex were cut off during a Seoul and Washington joint annual military drill known as Key Resolve. The following year, in 2010, the South introduced its May 24 measures banning new investment in the complex after the North sunk one of its warships at Cheonan. In April 2013, the North pulled out all of its workers from the complex, bringing the factories to a halt only to resume operations 5 months later in September. Despite these difficulties due to tensions between the two Koreas, the Kaesong complex reached new heights in cumulative output, surpassing the $2 billion mark in January 2013, a win for both sides. But on February 10, 2016, the South Korean Unification Ministry announced it would shut down the industrial complex as part of its sanctions against North Korea.
개성공단 자금이 북한의 핵과 미사일 개발에 이용되는 것을 막고 우리 기업들이 희생되지 않도록 하기 위해 개성공단을 전면 중단하기로 하였습니다.
More than a year after the shutdown, the heated debate on whether the industrial complex should be reopened is still ongoing. Right, this month last year, the halt in operations at the Kaesong Industrial Park made headlines as the future of the complex was thrown in limbo. Did you cover the event, Frank, last year?
Yes, I did. I did cover the event, the shutdown of the complex last year. It was related. Park Geun-hye used the nuclear test and missile tests of early 2016 as kind of a reason to shut down the complex. I do believe, as a conservative, she was looking to adjust relations with North Korea and use that opportunity to again put more pressure on North Korea.
Right. Fred, I understand you covered it too.
Yeah, I mean, I covered even before when the North Korean regime shut it down a couple of months or a year before. But I was lucky enough to visit the Kaesong complex when it was open, when it was fully functioning, and that was really, really fascinating and amazing experience. I mean, I could see North Korean people and South Korean people working together, chatting, discussing, having like daily and very natural interaction. This is like the beginning of unification. I could really feel like it was a very amazing experiment.
Marcus, what role do you believe the complex?
Well, it played a very important role, I think. It was the last point of cooperation between North Korea and South Korea. It provided North Korea with a source of hard currency, and it also helped train a lot of North Korean workers and mid-level managers who got an insight in how to run a business in an open market economy.
Something that I found really interesting is that I interviewed some South Korean managers, and it turned out that they were exchanging not only information about South Korea, for example, but as well like some illegally, but they were exchanging products, USB keys. So I think for North Korean people, they got a lot of information and product coming from South Korea, and I think it was a pretty efficient way to undermine North Korean regime propaganda.
One of them was a change in the culture of the tens of thousands, something like 54,000 workers that work there. People that have been there, that work there, they said how the behavior of mostly women that work there had changed. Their appearances had changed. You know, there are many, many other different levels under which the inter-Korean cooperation at the Kaesong complex affected North Korea that are sometimes not recognized. We tend to look at the numbers and suggest how it may have been used to prop up their nuclear program or something like that, whereas these other very subtle benefits that are very widespread throughout the country, not just maybe in Kaesong, but other people observing that in North Korea and in South Korea.
Marcus, do you believe the Unification Ministry's decision to suspend operations was inevitable?
It depends on what you're trying to achieve, right? I mean, when Park Geun-hye first came into office, the rhetoric, the stance towards North Korea was very different from what it is now. She's talking about building a relationship of trust.
저는 한반도 신뢰 프로세스로 한민족 모두가 보다 풍요롭고 자유롭게 생활하며 자신의 꿈을 이룰 수 있는 행복한 통일 시대의 기반을 만들고자 합니다.
When that didn't seem to work, sanctions were put into place. We're trying to isolate the regime in North Korea, and the shutdown of Kaesong Complex was a part of that.
I think it was unfortunately inevitable because at the time, if you remember, South Korea was asking every country to stop all trade with North Korea. They were asking China to put in place sanctions to stop any kind of trade. So South Korea could not ask every country to stop to trade with North Korea and at the same time keep this complex open. So diplomatically, they didn't have any choice. But I think it was a mistake. I think they shouldn't have closed it. Before the park, it was a military base. Kaesong used to be a military base. So I as a citizen of Seoul, I feel safer knowing that Kaesong is a industrial park rather than a military base.
Right. It's very interesting to see this come up as an issue in the election because you have progressives here in a better position with an upcoming presidential election, and they're suggesting that they may try to reopen the Kaesong Industrial Complex, and that will be difficult given the missile test that just took place Sunday and the position of the other countries in the international community that are observing sanctions with North Korea and the US and Japan and South Korea trying to pressure China to tighten the sanctions on North Korea. So I think it'll be difficult. There might be some type of exception that will have to be made for Kaesong to reopen.
The decision to halt operations at the Kaesong Industrial Complex has led to extensive business losses for firms that ran factories in the complex. We have details of that in this report. As a symbol of inter-Korean economic cooperation, Kaesong Industrial Complex has produced substantial results. According to a 2014 report from Hyundai Research Institute, the economic benefits for the South helped spur domestic demand by $3.26 billion, while the North raked in an estimated $380 million in foreign currency earnings. But on January 6, 2016, Pyongyang carried out its fourth nuclear test. A month later, on February 7th, it test-fired a long-range rocket, straining inter-Korean ties and creating an unprecedented challenge for the Kaesong complex.
지금까지 개성공단을 통해 북한에 총 6,160억 원이 현금이 유입되었고 작년에만도 1,320억 원이 유입되었으며 정부와 민간에서 총 1조 190억 원이 투자가 이루어졌는데 그것이 결국 국제사회가 원하는 평화의 길이 아니라 핵무기와 장거리 미사일을 고도화하는 데 쓰여진 것으로 보입니다.
Accused as a channel for the regime's foreign currency earning operations, the industrial park was shuttered. In response, the North kicked out all South Korean workers and froze their company assets.
총 투자 금액은 32억이고요. 그다음에 이제 이번에 그 보험에 받은 거는 이제 18억 정도. 그래서 토탈 한 15억 정도가 지금 손실이 나 있고 이 15억 정도는 지금 은행의 부채로 그대로 안고 가고 있는 거죠.
So far, tenant companies have seen an estimated $1.34 billion in losses. But government assistance has only reached $417 million, just about a third. Growing uncertainty between the two Koreas on the diplomatic and national security front has left the Kaesong complex shuttered for now with no clear sign of resolution. Seoul's Unification Ministry claimed that Pyongyang was using the revenue from the park to fund its nuclear experiments as well as missile tests. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think anyway, closing or not closing Kaesong wouldn't change anything. For North Korea, the nuclear program is the first priority. So they will cut any funding. They're already doing it, actually. They will stop buying food. They will stop funding their health system. They will stop funding their education. I mean, we know that they don't care much about the welfare of the people. I mean, this is really the priority. So even if they have the little money, it will go to the nuclear program, and they will always have money. They have a lot of, they send workers abroad. They trade with China, and we know that this trade with China actually increased last year. So closing Kaesong or not, I think have literally no impact on the nuclear and ballistic program of North Korea.
It was really curious to read some of the commentary that came out over the past week about this year anniversary of Kaesong closing, suggesting that it did have an effect on North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. North Korea conducted an unprecedented number of missile tests last year and 2 nuclear tests. So targeting the Kaesong Industrial Complex as part of North Korea's nuclear and missile development is really kind of stretching it. And if you're going to do that, then you're asking for or suggesting very widespread economic sanctions that would be, a step closer to a much more tense situation here on the Korean Peninsula, and something that I don't think any analyst would really advise.
Right. As we heard in the report, companies operating in the complex claim to have seen losses amounting to 1.5 trillion won. Now, at the start of the project, the South Korean government pledged political risk insurance to cover losses in investment. Keeping this in mind, how extensive should the government's coverage of the losses be?
I mean, I think they should help the company as much as possible, because that was the first Korean government decision to close the complex, the Kaesong complex, and they took the decision so fast that companies were not warned in advance. I mean, I interviewed one of the owner of one of these companies, and he was crying on the phone, and he said, "I couldn't save even a sheet of paper. They just told us to leave."
Yeah, I don't want to sound too cynical, but I think that of course the government should honor the promises that it gave the businesses that are involved in the Kaesong Industrial Complex. But at the same time, it's a very high risk environment to be in, and the companies have made a decent amount of money out of the venture in Kaesong, and they knew that they were taking a risk by getting involved. So you should take that into consideration as well, I think. But of course, it's very important that the government honors the promises that it gave the businesses, and if they can't do that they're compensated in some way.
Right. Following the suspension of operations at the Kaesong Industrial Complex, a month later, in March, the United Nations Security Council imposed tough sanctions on North Korea, resulting in a loss of about $200 million in foreign currency for Pyongyang during the 9 months immediately following the sanctions. Which country, South Korea or North Korea, bears the brunt of the losses, in your opinion, amid the halt in operations at Kaesong?
I think that if you measure the losses sort of precisely quantitatively, most would argue that North Korea suffers the brunt of losses due to the Kaesong Industrial Complex closing down. But if we look at the situation, the tension on the Korean Peninsula that's really existed since I've been here, more than 15 years, I think that casts a cloud over the entire South Korean economy in terms of foreign investment and trade that might have taken place if there wasn't this kind of uncertainty with North Korea. Every few years we have some major event take place on the Korean Peninsula that really causes the international community, let alone South Koreans, to worry quite a bit about what's going to happen here. And I think that has a negative effect on potential foreign investment here in South Korea.
I agree, and it's actually pretty impressive if you look back at the period of time where the Kaesong Industrial Complex have been into place. All the crises that it has weathered in that period. I mean, the sinking of the Cheonan, the shelling of Yeonpyeong Island, the whole time, the Kaesong complex, except for a brief closure for a few months back in 2013, I think, it stayed open. So I think that also helped as a sort of a buffer. It might have helped to ease the tensions a little bit in a time of crisis between the two countries.
I think it provides sort of a stopgap for the two Koreas to step back from potential escalation of a conflict. Now there's no, major project involved with North Koreans in South Korea or South Koreans in the case of Kaesong in North Korea during some type of crisis, security crisis between the two countries that would prevent them, again, from escalating that conflict, as in the case of the events in 2010.
Right. Now, needless to say, and as Marcus mentioned, companies that had factories in Kaesong are anxiously hoping for a resumption in business activities there. Yet, Pyongyang's most recent provocation and Washington's hardline stance under the new Trump administration has put the future of the industrial park in bleak weather, if I may. South Korean firms that once operated out of Kaesong are still hoping the complex will be reopened, something that looks increasingly difficult. Especially as the Trump administration in the US looks to be taking a hardline stance against Pyongyang. On February 7th, South Carolina Republican Representative Joe Wilson denounced North Korea's development of intercontinental ballistic missiles and introduced a resolution that calls for the swift deployment of the U.S. missile defense system THAAD to South Korea. The resolution is seen as an attempt to further pressure the North and indicate the THAAD battery will be deployed as planned. Meanwhile, on the 12th, North Korea test-fired what it described as a medium to intermediate range ballistic missile, again stirring up tensions on the peninsula. News of the test broke while US President Donald Trump was hosting Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in Florida. The two leaders immediately condemned the launch.
今般の北朝鮮のミサイル発射は断じて容認できません。北朝鮮は国連決議を完全に遵守すべきです。
I just want everybody to understand and fully know that the United States of America stands behind Japan, its great ally, 100%.
Global media outlets quickly pushed out reports of the missile test, with many speculating that the latest launch could be to gauge the new Trump administration's response. America's strong commitment to tight sanctions on North Korea and Pyongyang's continued provocations for now are likely to add another layer of uncertainty to the reopening of the Kaesong Industrial Complex. Keeping in mind the Trump administration's hardline stance against North Korea, what are the chances of that reality affecting the resumption of operations at Kaesong? Frank?
Well, I'm not sure that Trump has a policy yet. One of the things that Jim Mattis said when he came here, he said this on the plane, he said, I'm coming to listen. He's coming to listen to the leaders here in South Korea. Hopefully the Trump administration will take another look at this. The policy that has been, carried out in the past 7 years at least has not succeeded. There needs to be another policy put in place. And if that involves Kim Jong-un having hamburgers with Donald Trump, I'm all for that. That does seem somewhat unlikely right now. I think it'll be several months before we can even talk about negotiations, between the U.S. and North Korea. There's the military exercises coming up in March, the large-scale U.S.-South Korea military drills that happen every year. Those kind of raise the tension. You had this missile test. So you have to wait a couple months before things calm down again, and also give the Trump administration a chance to formulate its own policy.
I'm a bit optimistic when I see his reaction after the missile test. He was very restrained. we know Trump, he gets angry for very little things, and he just made a very short statement saying he was behind Japan, but there was no insult on the North Korean leader, there was no bluster, it was pretty moderate, and I find it encouraging, and maybe it gives me hope that he will approach this issue maybe in a more balanced way.
Both Fred and Frank have mentioned this, but yes, last week North Korea launched a ballistic missile. What do you think, Marcus, was the intention of that missile test?
Well, I think it was expected that North Korea would do something like that, either after the inauguration of Donald Trump, or like they ended up doing on the occasion of Donald Trump meeting Shinzo Abe of Japan. You should see it as a sort of test of how the U.S. is going to respond.
So Pyongyang was testing the waters?
Yeah, a little bit. I think you could say that. And I think that the missile launch was, by some people, considered the milder of the tests. You know, some people were talking about maybe seeing another nuclear test happening soon after Donald Trump took office. That didn't happen. It was a missile test.
I want to contradict Marcus a little bit here. A lot of us, when North Korea does something, a lot of people in the international community say it was because of us, it was aimed at us. North Korea is engaged in developing missiles that can, you know, reach other countries in the world and reach the United States. It could be on its own time frame, where, okay, it's time for a test, we've mastered this technology. They've said that even this test was different type of submarine-launched ballistic missile with an increased range, so there was technical experimentation going on with this particular test.
But the timing, if you look back and you see exactly the dates and the timing of the missile tests, and you know, they're either related, it seems, to national holidays in North Korea or to events taking place abroad. I don't think it's a coincidence that they tested the missile right when Donald Trump was meeting Shinzo Abe, the two major enemies of the North Korean state.
Okay, going back to Kaesong then, what are the chances of a resumption in operations there in the near future?
I think it's possible. I mean, I'm surprised to see that now we might have an election in South Korea pretty soon, and the candidates are saying that they're discussing it, the reopening of Kaesong, and the fact that China is not really implementing the UN sanctions makes it, I mean, it makes sense to say, well, anyway, we cannot struggle the regime and cut all sorts of funding, so why not try to cooperate and reopen Kaesong? I think there is a possibility.
I think it's really important, though, if they do reopen Kaesong, that at least South Korea says, okay, this isn't going to be politically linked to any other behavior of North Korea. If North Korea tests a nuclear missile, Kaesong is going to keep, you know, operation. If there's some other disagreement between North and South Korea, something in the West Sea, whatever it might be, Kaesong is not going to be affected. That was the original, you know, purpose of the Kaesong Industrial Complex, and the design of the Kaesong Industrial Complex was to remain outside of the political sphere and not be used for political purposes like it was when it was shut down just more than a year ago.
Right. Ultimately, this might be a tough question, but what kind of engagement do you believe would be a peaceful way of interacting with North Korea?
I'm a total sunshiner, so I believe in a broad range of engagement with North Korea. A lot of other engagement with North Korea that we don't see too much in the press, cultural engagement, religious engagement with North Korea, hasn't been enabled by the Ministry of Unification and President Park Geun-hye for the past, I think, at least couple of years. I would like to see that engagement enabled. Any type of engagement with North Korea enabled is going to bring the two Koreas together and bring North Korea more likely into the international community and less likely to pursue missile and nuclear development.
I think since money is obviously a problem, I think any kind of engagement that involves little money, as you mentioned, education, culture, history. Now, you know, in the past, like North and South Korean linguists used to agree to work on a common dictionary. All these kind of exchanges, I think, are good. We should send North Korean students abroad. All kind of exchanges that somehow, in the long run, will undermine the official propaganda will undermine the legitimacy of North Korean regime.
February 18th marks the second of the 24 seasonal divisions according to the lunar calendar. The second seasonal phase is known as Usu, which describes the snow melting and transforming into rain and water. In other words, Usu signals the end of the freezing cold weather. Let's hope that the currently frozen inter-Korean ties will soon mark their period of Usu. Thank you for being with us.